Leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
Hello, a very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond. On Spectrum tonight, the rule of law in post-election Uganda. What is the latest position of the Uganda Law Society about key issues that have been emerging? A number of issues centering on the rule of law have emerged in Uganda since the February elections that led to the return of President Yoweri Museveni and an NRM-dominated legislature. Shortly after the elections, the opposition rejected the results and resorted to protests, which are also used to highlight the economic situation in the country in what came to be known as the walk-to-work protests. Serious questions around the right to demonstrate and human rights came to the fore. The walk-to-work protests then prompted President Museveni to make a radical proposal to amend the constitution to take conditions on bail for suspects of selected charges, including rioters and economic saboteurs. This proposal is yet to be actualized, but MPs and the legal fraternity are looking at this proposal critically. A number of issues have also emerged in connection with the economic situation in the country, including demands for higher pay and allowances by teachers and health workers, bring about the debate on economic rights and a better working environment. Currently, there is a lot of debate about constitutionalism and transparency with regard to oil agreements and other pieces of information on the sector that is urgently needed by Parliament and the public. Government seems to be reluctant to make public the information, and the Speaker of Parliament has also hesitated to recall Parliament even after receiving a petition moved under Article 95, Section 5 of the Constitution. Lastly but not least, the courts in Uganda have recently pronounced themselves on several laws, declaring them null and void. Among these is the law on sedition. There are other unfair laws that also require urgent amendment according to experts. At the same time, there are calls to make laws on a number of issues, including torture. Now, this week the Uganda Law Society is launching activities to mark the Rule of Law Day, giving us an opportunity to seek their views on the issues highlighted above. And so, our guest tonight, Mr. James Mukasa Sebugenyi, President of the Uganda Law Society. You're most welcome, Mr. Sebugenyi.
Good evening, listeners.
We also have Mr. Hon Nkuzingoma, senior practicing advocate, also a former President of the Uganda Law Society. You're most welcome, Mr. Nkuzingoma.
Good evening, listeners.
Let's try to understand this doctrine. When you talk of the rule of law, Mr. Sebugenyi, what are you really talking about?
Thank you. Rule of law is one of the hallmarks of good governance, a civilized nation, and constitutionalism and constitutional practice and democracy. So, and it's one of our mandates as Uganda Law Society to make sure that the country is practicing the principles of rule of law, that all the arms of government are dealing with matters of rule of law very seriously, and that's the reason why we think it's a very important item for us to highlight.
And how do you measure it? Give us some benchmarks and pillars.
Some benchmarks, rule of law. They are the tenets of the rule of law. There is an independent, impartial, courageous judiciary with integrity. That's one of them. There is a doctrine of separation of powers. There is exercise of government power in accordance with the Constitution and with constitutionalism. There is law must be accessible and as far as possible intelligible, clear and predictable. Questions of legal rights and liability should ordinarily be resolved by application of the law and exercise of discretion. Lastly, the law must afford a definite protection of the fundamental human rights as prescribed by our Constitution. Those are some of the tenets of the rule of law.
And broadly speaking, looking at this country right now, are we working well?
I can say that in some circumstances we are working well, in some circumstances we are not. I'll give you an example. In circumstances where we are really doing very well on rule of law, I'll give you some examples. One is we have established the anti-corruption court and its activities currently, as you've just seen today. Something has happened in that court.
Yes.
And that creates confidence in the country that there is rule of law. The other one is the respect of court decisions by the executive and the legislature. If that is done, then you know that there is an element of practice of rule of law. And we can say, to a large extent, that is being practiced in this country. There is the establishment of commissions of inquiry into mismanagement, into people who cross the lines of the law. There is the aspect of freedom of expression by the citizens. To some extent, that is going on very well. There is also the aspect of the parliamentary public accountability committees and their activities. Those are aspects of rule of law. There is the role of the civil society and the fact that government has enabled them space within which to operate. One of it is Uganda Law Society. We have been given space to advise, guide, comment, condemn, compliment as and when it's necessary. The last one which I could mention is the establishment of the justice, law and order sector. That brings together all stakeholders in the sector with a closely linked mandate of administering justice, maintaining law and order, and human rights using a holistic approach. With those, I would say we are doing well, and we would like to commend government, all the arms of government, on that aspect. But let me change gears to the aspect of those areas where we are not doing very well on the rule of law. There is the inability of government to appoint the commissioners to the Judicial Service Commission. The Judicial Service Commission is a constitutional institution. To date, for 1 year, we don't have a Judicial Service Commission. That means the judiciary is being ignored, the appointment and discipline of judges is being ignored, and this is in the hands of the President, His Excellency the President of Uganda. Why is this being ignored? It brings in challenges with the judiciary operating under par, as we call it, or inadequately, under capacity. We are lacking judges in the Supreme Court, we are lacking judges in the Court of Appeal, we are lacking judges in the High Court. And it's the constitutional mandate of the President to appoint. These names have been given. Yes, we have been assured, but why 1 year? We have challenges where we have judges who are subject to disciplinary action. Nothing can be done because there is no Judicial Service Commission. Those are the areas which bring challenges on the rule of law. The other aspect, let me change, is interference of government into the activities of the judiciary. This has created some concern. Yes, we are aware that they have acknowledged that they have made a mistake, but we hope they will not do it again. And that is the background for the Rule of Law Day, when the government, the executive, sent the members to the High Court.
Yes.
In 2005.
Yes.
And from that day onwards, we've commemorated the Rule of Law Day, and that's the reason why this week we are doing so many activities to remind Ugandans, the public, the private sector, the donors, the stakeholders, to remember that it is important for us to remember constitutionalism and rule of law.
Will you have a monument on that day, unveiling to remember that day?
Not really a monument, but we shall be having a symposium, a half-day symposium. It will be at Garden City, where all the lawyers, the public, the parliamentarians, the government officials have all been invited on Friday the 7th of October. That will be the commemoration of the Rule of Law Day. And our theme will be constitutionalism and rights and
constitutionalism and rights. All right, maybe we'll get the theme.
Yes.
At some stage in
Thank you.
detail. Mr. Nkuzingoma, is that something that you agree with, that we're moving in a certain direction?
Yes,
what kind of marks would you give?
You know, it's difficult to give marks, but I think, as the President of the Rosat has said, we are moving fairly on a very good, on a pace. We're on track. He has clearly pointed out where we are doing very well and within which we can do better, and has also expressed his concerns and our concerns as why we are not moving at all, specifically failure or delayed explanations. There could be explanations, but the public does not know what these explanations. What he's pointing out is there is a constitutional duty, constitutional responsibility on the side of the President to do certain things, on the side of one group to do certain things, and does not do them. So we are moving very well, but we can definitely do a little bit better.
And why do you think we're making these hesitant steps?
That's very difficult to establish because one has got to interrogate the person who is constitutionally mandated. In this case, for example, the example is as quoted with the Judicial Service Commission. One would not answer. It is the President himself who knows why. He's explained that names have been forwarded, and one shouldn't guess. That's an area. A constitutional duty lies on somebody. He has got to practice it. He's got to do his work. If he does not do his work, he's refusing to obey the Constitution for that period when he's not doing it. But as to exact reasons why he's not doing it, he's strict and within his own personal knowledge.
All right. Let's look briefly at the three arms of government: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Are they working well the way you look at them?
To the eyes of the public, sometimes he's given an example. Mr. Sebogenya has explained, for example, what happened previously. It has not happened again for 3-4 years. At least we've not had an incident.
The Black Mamba.
The Black Mamba.
Not 6 years. Maybe
not 6 years. Maybe they have repented. Something like that. The Parliament is now new. It is doing its work. We have not had a situation where there has been a clash between Parliament and Judiciary. I think we have an instance. We have not had any bad instance between the Parliament and the Executive. Maybe quietly they are having problems, but I think publicly it's not coming out. So we believe. I think James agrees with me. There's some public harmony publicly. You see, for us, what happens is something that concerns the public becomes something of public interest. So when there is no public outcry, then we assume things are flowing very well.
And why is that? I know it's in the Constitution. Would it not be better for the legislature to manage its own affairs, just like the legislature, for the judiciary to manage its own affairs, appoint these judges and so on?
No. The judiciary cannot appoint. Under the Constitution,
the legislature appoints its own people. The president appoints his cabinet without referring to the judiciary.
Yes, but in this particular instance, the clause in the Constitution is very clear. You see that constitutionalism, rule of law is about abiding by what the Constitution says.
Yes.
The Constitution says the president shall appoint the members of the Judicial Service Commission with approval of Parliament. So the president must appoint and then send the names to the Parliament. Parliament approves. That must be respected. That's the flaw. It cannot be amended right now.
And you don't think that clause ties the hands of the judiciary at all?
No.
Is it congruent with practice? Does it work, or is it an encumbrance?
Previously it has worked, James, I don't know.
It has a few challenges with it, because you see, we have a situation whereby the Chief Justice of this country cannot discipline his own judges very specifically. It has to be the Judicial Service Commission. So if you don't appoint the Judicial Service Commission, then you create a gap in this whole process. Appointment of judges, disciplining judicial officers, and other related functions of the Judicial Service Commission. Now that is in the mandate. It's a constitutional establishment in our Constitution. So we are requesting whoever has to do his job, do your job, so that the other arms of government can also perform and be in good standing in this dispensation of good governance, rule of law, and other related constitutional rights. Because you need to remember that the government, there are two aspects. The executive executes laws. The legislature makes the laws.
Yes.
The judiciary interprets the laws.
Yes.
You can see each part of this wagon wheel has to do its bit. If one is inadequately equipped, then there is going to be bad performance on the part of all the others. That's why we bring up this matter. And it's crucial in this dispensation, good governance and democracy, that these aspects are implemented and respected.
And what can be done to move the hands of the president faster? He appointed a cabinet recently, but this one, why would he wait for a whole year?
We have been assured that this item is top on the agenda. Last week, at the 16th annual review of the jail sector,
yes,
were assured by Honorable Kahinda
Minister for Justice,
the Attorney General, in the presence of the Chief Justice and the media. We hope it is going to be done. Because if it is not done, let us come out very candidly about it. We are considering petitioning the Constitutional Court.
If the president fails to appoint,
for declarations as to whether the president is not complying with the Constitution. We will have no choice.
You want to take him to court?
We will try it out.
Will you give him a deadline or what?
We will not give him a deadline. Reason being, they have assured us that action is being taken by the Attorney General, Deputy Minister, and the Minister.
So 3 months down the line, if there's no action, what happens?
Let's say 3 weeks down the line.
3 weeks. What happens?
It's good to give ourselves timelines. If within 3 weeks Judicial Service Commission action is not being taken, we will go to the Constitution.
And that could take a whole year, another year.
Not really.
Yes.
Constitutional matters are given priority.
What will happen?
We believe orders will be made. Declarations will be made.
The court will command the president to appoint these men.
The court will make declarations.
Commanding the president, appoint these men now.
Reminding him.
Well, they should give him a deadline, otherwise it's pointless reminding him. It could take him 2 years again.
We will cross that bridge. But at least we are sure, well, with that kind of action, something will be done.
And there are no
we hope and pray we don't have to go down that road.
There are no precedents to this?
Not necessarily.
All right, let's go a little lower on the arms of government. Let's look at the police, for instance, and the army. Are they respecting the rule of law?
One would say that the police is trying its level best to respect the rule of law. Yes, we know there are challenges. Yes, we know that there are some people who are not willing to comply with the basic requirements of law and order as prescribed. Because as we know, some of these rights are not absolute, like demonstration and the related activities. But where we are concerned with the police is the excessive use of force and the brutality they are meting out to the population when they are involved in activities of exercising their rights. And one of the things which we have got to understand and actually have appreciated from statistics is that we have a police force which has elements which are inexperienced and ill-trained. That is a fact, and that has been documented. So there is a need to weed out this aspect in the police force of those elements who are ill-equipped, ill-trained, and inexperienced. And I think I can quote that from the jealous sector annual review, this one came out very clearly. So
there are policemen who know nothing about what they're doing.
They have a problem. They don't understand the law. They don't understand what they are supposed to do, and that creates. That's what we call the bad tomatoes in the basket. In addition to other aspects of non-compliance to basic rule of law practices.
And these have been trained. They go to Masindi.
We are reminding them that they could do a little bit more.
Even though they've gone through the formal channels of training, they still don't do a good job, some of them.
I believe you've seen the commentary from the retired deputy.
Yes.
What does that tell you? That they appreciate that there's a problem. What we're trying to tell them is to remind them, act faster, otherwise our country, the scenes we see on the radio, on the media, are bad scenes of police brutality. That's what people see out there. Is that what the country wants to reflect? And that's the question we are posing here. Rule of law. Everybody, particularly the police, should be remembering this.
Listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, the rule of law in post-election Uganda. What is the latest position of the Uganda Law Society about key issues that have been emerging? Our guests tonight, well, people who would know. Mr. James Mukasa Sebugenge, President of the Uganda Law Society. Mr. Hon Kabakumba, a senior practicing advocate, also a former President of the Uganda Law Society. We'll be able to contribute to this discussion later. I'll read out the numbers when that time comes. Mr. Kabakumba, we see a heavy police presence after this election on the streets, many places you go to, and yet the government won with a big majority. How would you explain this contradiction?
I don't want to call it a contradiction straight away, but I just want our listeners to know. See, under the Constitution, Chapter 12, under Article 212, the police has a function, and it's very important to be clear about that function. The functions of the Uganda police include to protect life and property. That's a mouthful. Protecting life and property is a very big assignment. So everything they are doing, one of their functions is to protect life and property. And protecting life and property means being present in some aspects.
So they're protecting property this time after the polls.
Let's first go to the entire into the package. B, to preserve law and order. Preserving law and order, again, is a very big package. Preserving law and order on the streets, in the homes, everywhere. Then C is to prevent and to detect crime. Preventing and detecting crime. And of course, D, to cooperate with the citizen, civilian authority, and other security organs. Now, you can see that the aspect of protecting life and property, the aspect of preserving law and order, the aspect of preventing and detecting crime means police presence. Now, I'm not defending the numbers, but you can see if they are within that constitutional mandate, they must be present. I don't know about the numbers.
Well, in the past, we didn't see a lot of those blue vans at roundabouts.
Yes.
Now after the polls, we see them.
Yes. For as long as they are not doing anything outside their constitutional mandate,
There's no problem.
I would not, legally, I don't think they have any problem. They can be present to say they are detecting crime. They can be present to say they are protecting life and property. If their presence sends a chill to an intending thief and he keeps away,
then it works well.
they are prevented. If their presence prevents a hooligan from setting a house on fire, so be it. If their presence can keep the streets of Kampala orderly and the other places, well and good. If their presence does not interfere with the ordinary life of the citizens, they don't stop you from moving and they don't scare you from doing your work, well and good. The important thing here for us, as far as the rule of law is concerned, is that whatever they are doing
Must be within the
parameters of the law.
And of course, we know that the kind of things you just mentioned became imminent. Well, it became very important to stop those criminals exactly after the elections. Let's talk about the walk to work protests. Shortly after the elections, they had these protests. And did you see, Mr. Selvin, did you see any issues that could have infringements on the rule of law as police interface with the rioters?
Yes.
Demonstrators?
Yes. Like we said, excessive use of force.
Yes.
We have seen police officers who have acted with that excess use of force. And one of the things which is of our concern, yes, we have seen some of the rioters being taken to book. But to this day, we see an element of impunity of some of these police officers who have been involved in acts of brutality, not being taken to book.
Explain to us some of that brutality. Bundling people on pickups, or?
Well, to mention but a few. But we have seen situations
Well, what do you
whereby-
expect? You expect them to be given limousines, be taken to police cells?
No, that's not what we are saying. We are saying that if a police officer has acted with excessive force in executing
I would like to break down that word for us.
I'll give you an example. On NTV, there was that army personnel pointing a gun at a walking pedestrian, a young man in a red shirt, pointing a gun at him. Somebody like that should be taken for disciplinary action, and action should be seen to be done, so that justice is seen to be done, so that he's prosecuted, he's disciplined, and that information relayed to the public. And we've raised this matter. Where we see nothing being done and there's impunity, the public loses confidence. And we've raised this with the IGP, we've raised this with the jealous sector, that please, even with the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice, that please, we would like to see some of these people being taken to book, like they have taken those people they consider to have breached the law during the walk-to-work protests.
Right.
That's what we want to see. Let them parade those same people who are being disciplined. That's what the country would like to see, that there is equal treatment under the law. And that's the rule of law principle. Equal treatment, irrespective of status in life.
Would you bring a private lawsuit as Uganda Law Society? Well, you have a list of these.
Yes.
Get their photographs, find their name.
It's part of our mandate to make what we call interventions, and we can even bring out strategic public interest litigation actions. We can. It's within our mandate, and those are some of the things we have to do. But in the circumstances now, we are asking the government, you have the machinery to do what you have to do.
Right.
Our duty is to remind you, to guide you, to advise you, and we are doing that.
Right.
That's why we are coming out in this week for the Rule of Law Day to remind the public, the citizens, that it is important for all of us to promote this rule of law. Because without a rule of law and good governance situation and constitutionalism, you cannot come out to earn a living. And eventually the economic circumstances will get worse. And those are some of the things we're trying to ventilate with this Rule of Law Day.
This is Spectrum on Radio 1. We'll be back after this break.
Even back when I met George, I noticed something different about him. Maybe it was the way people looked up to him, or maybe it was his willingness to always help. He struggled at the start, and today he is a successful bar owner. Despite his success, George didn't forget where he came from. He built friendships with his patrons and learned from them as much as they learned from him. He used his business acumen to help many others achieve their dreams. The fact is, many people owe their success to him. But George never talks about it. He's just who he is. special. So here's to men like George who make a difference. Who enjoy Now Special, the rich, satisfying taste from the source. Now Special, you've earned it. Not for sale to persons under 18.
Is your internet provider turning your world upside down? Broadband Company offers fast and reliable internet solutions. And for the first 100 subscribers this month, we offer zero connection fees. Save up to 400,000. For more information on these offers, call toll-free 0800 222 111.
Broadband Company, more than you expect.
Maria!
Hey, Mom, what are you doing here?
I forgot to spread on the other slice, Maria. Take this.
Hey, Mrs. Makumbi, what are you doing here?
You know, Blue Band helps my child grow. That's why I spread on every slice.
Every slice spread with Blue Band is an opportunity for your child to grow. So mums, spread on every slice. Daily Blue Band, daily growth.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90 is brought to you by Stanbic Bank.
Welcome back on Spectrum tonight. The rule of law in post-election Uganda. What is the latest position of the Uganda Law Society about key issues that have been emerging? Our guests tonight, Mr. James Mukasa Sebugenyi, President of the Uganda Law Society, and Mr. Deon Kuzingoma, a senior practicing advocate, also a former President of the Uganda Law Society. You'll be able to call in shortly. I'll read out the numbers when that time comes, dear listeners. Let's talk about the right to bail. President Museveni said that we should give people 6 months. If someone is rioting or involved with other economic sabotage crimes in courts, they should go to jail for 6 months. We don't hear from them.
Our problem with that, listeners, is that you will be sentenced to 6 months before you are tried. That contravenes international laws and conventions which Uganda subscribes to. It's not constitutional. It's taking us to the dark ages. And whoever is